You know what I mean? Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Do You Know What I Mean podcast. Today, I have with me Breanna Bell and Curly Scott. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to have you guys here. So, a little bit about you guys. You're in the hair industry, both hairdressers, I believe. You specialize in curly hair, right?
I would say so, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, actually, you specialize in curly hair so much that you go by Curly Scott, right?
Indeed. Well, it was meant to be ironic, to be fair. The fact that I used to have curly hair and I'm Scottish. So, but it's actually turned out to be a really useful way into a conversation, particularly when we're traveling about. So yeah, I'm known as the Curly Scot.
So how did you both get in the industry? Breanna first.
I think getting into the industry kind of stemmed from personal experience for me. I've just always had an interest in doing my own hair, learning how to do my hair. And I grew up kind of in the YouTube world before influencing was a thing. When YouTube kind of came around, I was just, oh, this is cool. Record my videos, share it with the people. And so as I got older, I was like, I can see this as a career. And so very quickly, I just wanted to learn more about my hair and share that with others. And so that's how I really dove deep in learning about curly hair, and building a business out of it is just my surrounding and personal experience. Yeah.
So the videos you started were all about curly hair from young age?
Yes. So funny story. So it all started off with just wanting to enter a giveaway. You've probably seen online people say, oh, we're doing a giveaway sponsored by this person, make a video. And so I was like, oh, I just need to talk about my hair. I can repeat that. I can do what someone else is doing. And the more I did it, the more I don't know, started learning more about myself, learning more about my hair. And I'm born and raised in Kansas, and that's not quite a place where you see a lot of people who look like me, or see a lot of hair salons that also service curly hair. So it was just one video after another of just trying this style, trying that style, wanting to enter a giveaway to win something. And I think I was maybe like 11 at the time. Mm-hmm. So it went from fun and games to people actually asking questions and wanting my advice on things. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of influencing before it's big.
And did you eventually go to beauty school for it or something?
I did. So fast forward, after high school, I went to the University of Kansas for my business degree in entrepreneurship and leadership. And then also at the same time, I was in cosmetology school to get my license for that as well.
And was the school catered to curly hair? Did you find beauty schools did a good job on that? Or?
No, the school I was going to, it was not catered to curly hair, but they were very much science based and wanting to teach students about product knowledge. And when it came to, coloring, making sure that you understood the science behind things. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was something that I appreciated, whether they knew they were doing it or not. It challenged my brain to say, okay, well, let's look at the facts first, because when they're explaining, the elements of hair and the elements of products and how it all interacts, my challenge was, okay, where do I show up in this? I had a lot of educators who were very smart, but I would ask those questions and they were like, I don't know. I just know this is science. And so it got me into this mode of, okay, how do I study science and seeing the elements and aspects of how curls fit into this? And so, and not just tight curly hair, but all shapes and forms, loose to tight, and also straight hair as well, because if you do certain things to straight hair, it can really texturize it and make it appear curly. So I guess we'll get into
into that. That's all sounding all exciting.
Yeah.
How about you, Scott?
Well, I was listening, and it probably isn't apparent looking at us, but there is an age difference. We could be mistaken for twins almost, I think.
I
but the truth is that YouTube didn't exist when I started out, and so for my journey, I was raised in Scotland, and I was raised in a small village, and then within that village I was the only person of colour, and there is a caveat to that. I had a sister as well, but that's a whole other story. But my journey alone, going to high school first, going everywhere first, was unique. And around about the age of 14, it was when I would say I noticed the fairer sex, and I thought I need to sort this out. My mother, I was adopted, and my parents were white. My mother was a hairdresser, and my choices of hairstyles up to the age of 14 were in the winter not getting it cut, So I had a fro, and in the summer I had a short fro because that was it. And then you become aware of, in fact, when my mother passed away, which it sounds sad, but the funny part of that was I went into the attic and found a suitcase that I stored when I left home at 15. I packed all my records up, and you go through my albums, and all my role models had afros,
Wow.
so for now some ridiculous ones like Boney M, Shalimar, which is a great one, and you go through the list. There's even a guy called Leo Sayer, he's white but he had an amazing afro, and I didn't realise, it's only when I saw my albums I was looking for, I didn't have the internet, but clearly there was something on that. There was one guy, David Grant, and he had cut his hair short at the sides with an afro and relaxed it. Now I can say the word relaxed now, but I didn't know what a relaxer was. And I took my mum's perm lotion, and I got her to cut my hair, and I took mum's perm lotion and actually straightened my own hair and put heat on it. And again, maybe even as a non-hairdresser, you maybe get the idea that after you put heat on it and then put a cap on it for 3 hours, and then it went straight. Within a week or so, it also fell out. And then I thought, I made a mistake. I left it on too long, so I grew it again, but and left it only on for an hour and a half, and it fell out. But I knew nothing about. What I gained was that I designed the haircuts. When I went to school, people would go, because we only did a small barbershop or hair salon. Did you go there? I'm like, no. Who did that? Well, I designed it myself. And could you design a haircut for me? These are people that had never noticed me before. And if they had, the things that they were saying weren't positive necessarily. Now they were recognising me, and it was so I found it quite empowering. I spoke to my mum, I'm designing haircuts, and I thought, I like this. Now the other thing, and this is no joke, people think, because I do tend to humour on things, but I also saw a movie called Shampoo. Now a lot of people in the room are too young possibly to remember that, but the Goldie Hawn was in it, and the main hairdresser in that, he ran about Beverly Hills, been very popular with his female clients, for want of a better way of saying that, on a motorbike with a hairdryer down the back. I'm like, that looks like a really cool lifestyle. So I thought, I want a bit of that. And at 15, I left home and moved into my own apartment. And by 16, I had got my first job in a hair salon. And within the first month,
was that any training straight to a hair salon?
So what the way it worked back in the day, we'll come probably more closer to that later on. But in the UK, there's options, and one of the options for me that I took was this was a government program, and you would do 4 days in the salon and 1 day at college, 1 day day release at college, and that would be funded by the government. And and that's how we train. There's other versions of that, which I'm sure we'll go into later on. So, but the salon that I ended up in, the first person that gave me the job and gave me the opportunity, I remember thinking that every lady that came in, and no offence, they were of a certain age. They had a certain colour of hair, and they had a certain, and I'm thinking none of them looked like Goldie Hawn. And I also think that there's no motorbike, there's no glamour, and it was like, but to be fair, I found it really, really exciting, even though it's nothing like I imagined, which is probably good. And within 1 month, I moved to a larger group. And with that group, I stayed till I was 22, till I got my first franchise and opened my first business. And I got a lot of opportunities through that. But to circle back to probably one of the things you asked about, how we came into this, I didn't know about my own hair. And I went to college, as I said, at 16, thinking, well, now I'm going to learn about my hair. And that's when we realised there was a problem, because I wasn't included, or not obviously included, in the curriculum, which is something, again, maybe we'll circle back to. But there's certain things that now, with hindsight, if they'd said, for example, they spoke to, one of the first things they talk about, and certainly the curriculum in the UK, was about some of the first people that worked with hair were the Egyptians. Now, I accepted that. I have a memory of the person I thought of was maybe, like Liz Taylor and Cleopatra, and any other kind of iconic TV version of, or a cinematic version of an Egyptian. And even she's not quite that, she's Persian. And anyway, but the point being is that Egypt is in Africa. And we go back 6,000 years now, and we discover lots of examples of, you'll see it with the stone architecture. You can see that the people had dreadlocks. They worked with wigs. They worked with hairpieces. They did straighten. They did perm in some point. They actually worked with natural to dye and to colour the hair. And it'd been really useful to know that when we were talking about the first people that we talk about in our histories was actually looked like me, as opposed to saying the Egyptians. And obviously now I've got a wonderful book about the Afro combs going back 6,000 years, and all these different variations. And they're much more than what we would use as a pick now. They obviously they symbolised and represented a lot to do with tribe and belonging, but it's fascinating, all this. And again, that these histories were lost at that time. But it's great to know that actually they were talking about someone that looked like me. They probably didn't even know it themselves. But anyway, that I discovered that later on as I started to then. There's a story, and then I'll probably let Breanna talk, or you'll never get a word in. But there was a gentleman called Tony, and he was American, which is interesting because I'm in America right now. But that's maybe a full circle moment. I was sitting in the salon, and I had another one of my creations with my hairstyle. Again, it was short, and I used to use tongs now to stretch it out because it was flat tops back in the early 80s, and I dyed the colour red, and the red had washed out, so it was looking like a burnt orange because I'd bleached it too much. And but I'm learning. I'm only 17, and I saw this very dark gentleman, this black man, who used to walk past the salon every morning, and he'd give me a nod, and I'd give him a nod because there's not many of us of the colour in this town. And one day, eventually, comes in, and he's like, "Hey, man," I'm like, "Hey," and he's speaking to me, and this is great, because I've nobody in my world was of colour, right? So this is cool. And he said, I've been walking past, and he said, "I couldn't help but notice your hair." And I'm like, "Thank you." He's like, "Would you like to come in?" He's like, "No, man, your hair's shit." And he's like, and he gave me a bag of hair products and said, "Listen, sort it out."
Oh, that's funny.
Right. And I think, well, Tony was a submariner, and he's from America. But that was a wake-up call for me, because I'm like, imagine my hair was so bad that a gentleman walked off the street into a hair salon
He bought hair products for you?
And brought hair products to me. So
he's not even in the business.
Right, he's not even in the business.
Oh, wow.
But so I then went, I need to find out more about my hair. I need to find out more about my community, my everything. This became that. So that the ignorance that came from college and all that, it then became something that now I'm sitting here talking to you, and it's became that I need to know. And interesting enough, the knowledge wasn't that easy to find. You'd be surprised.
So you both grew up in cities that didn't have a lot of African Americans, right? So Scotland, you said you were the only one. Kansas, were you in Kansas City or
Kansas?
Just Kansas.
Yeah,
in
just
general?
Kansas. Yeah, Lawrence.
So do you think the reason the schools didn't teach about curly hair, about African hair, because of where you grew up, or is it an issue, would you say, all around the United States and UK? Has that improved since then? I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. It's a great question. First of all, it's a global thing.
It is,
right?
Yeah.
So that will go into the why.
Yeah.
But yeah, the systems that we were involved in, the demographic probably didn't suggest or support there was any need for that. But then you go back further and think about to do with people didn't want to, the way I want to wear my hair, the way that Breanna's wearing hair today, that wasn't seen as professional or corporate for the longest time anyway. So the need to do hair was all about conforming to a specific look that was deemed. And even, I mean, we can talk about it on colour, but we can go further afield that, men weren't even maybe supposed to grow their hair long because it was meant to be short back and side. There was a way to fit into business, to fit into how you look right across the board, representation, how we've seen on TV. And we'll talk about all of us, that it's only more recently that we have a bit more freedom. But certainly, I know some wonderful professional hairstylists within the UK that are Afro hair specialists, and they still come through the same curriculum that I came through and had then to go out and get the knowledge somewhere else.
Wow.
I think that's definitely something, like a question I chased for a long time. I remember before I even went to school, I had different family members who had already gone to cosmetology school in other states. And so I'm like, what's the best school, where to go? And that was a conversation some of my mentors, I guess you could say at the time, encouraged me that you're going to go to school and you may not hear that information. And to hear them coming from some of the biggest, largest, great schools, and just to immediately have that, reality, it did kind of at least have me have a realistic expectation is this is something I want to go into. But the reality is this is the experience I may have. I don't want that to jip the experience that I'm going to have. And I think that is why I went into school, kind of having that like, okay, well, what is the benefit of me being here? What does the school have to offer? But later on, kind of after graduating school, I really dove deep into understanding why is that, why is this a global thing? Why is this an issue? And it really comes down to like the institutionalizing, like when cosmetology, that period began. And it was in the 1927, where a lot of different states started creating cosmetology boards and regulations and requiring, that people have to go through school and have specific curriculums that they follow. And so when you look at that time period and you see all the different division that was going on and who was the ones creating those regulations, it's like, wow, that hasn't changed. We can get into it, but I just, I've had a lot of
Am I seeing an opportunity here? Is there an opportunity here for somebody to create
very much so.
A school for curly hair, the next, that'd be like your master's, you graduate from beauty school and then you go in and specialize in curly hair or something?
That's what we do, but in some ways. But so for me, first of all, touch on, we talked maybe earlier on about the difference between the two. I imagined, wrongly as it turns out, that because of the demographic in America, the African American, and based on where I'd grown up in, a smaller percentage of people of colour, and Americans being licensed. We don't have licensing in the UK, so you'll know that now.
That's amazing to me, even for Botox. And
that's crazy. It's the Wild West. But anyway, I just imagined that they've got it sussed, and I came to America and discovered, oh my goodness, they have exactly the same challenges. In fact, if anything, more so because of the licensing. So there's a double-edged sword, So what we have within our industry, and it's, I see it when I say globally, that's really narrow-minded, I guess. But in the areas that I come into, so we're talking about European coming into America, what we have is segregation still. What you have is what is known as language we put into that is black salons within our industry. So we know that there's people you would go to, and that's where it's been created through a need and necessity. And for me, to speak from my lived experience, I'm of mixed heritage, and so I kind of fell through the cracks, if that's possible, to understand that even though I had my dreadlocks and I had an afro, and my salon, for example, caters for everyone. I've got 13 siblings, and some of them are very light with poker straight hair, and some of them are very dark with very tight hair. And so my salon wants to cater for everyone. I've my daughters are of different skin color, and my wife, or my ex-wife, sorry, is of mixed heritage as well, but she looks white. And the point is that black salons weren't necessarily offering what I wanted done for my hair, but also the other salons, whatever we would call them, didn't cater for me either. So where do you go? And so this is something that I've discovered. It's not unique to me, and I talk to that, and it's quite good. So what maybe is seen to be a disadvantage is a superpower now, because having the awareness of that, then we can address that.
Yeah. So I owned the salons for a little while, for about 2 or 3 years. And I remember some of the stylists saying, I don't do black hair, or curly hair. I'm not specialized in that. And that to me is kind of strange, because they do men's hair, but then it stops at curly hair.
Yeah.
Well, so that to me, the education is...
Isn't that an interesting thing? Because, so, we go back to what I was talking about there. So if you are a hairdresser and you tell me that you don't do let's say if you want to go in this in the UK, we will call it Afro hair. We're happy to identify from the hair is where origins are from Africa, and in the UK, in America, it's been sanitized somewhat, and we describe it oftentimes as coily, which is another thing politically I'm not comfortable with. But the point being is that I'm of mixed heritage, and my daughters are further down the chain of mixed heritage, and so their hair texture changes. So as a hairdresser, you say you don't do curly hair. At what point would how diluted do we to what point do you is there a cutoff? You know, so if we want to be inclusive, we look at the hair as a material, and it works on a spectrum, going from poker straight to tightest.
100%.
And if you can cut hair, you should be able to cut whole hair. It's just the same as if you think of the color as a spectrum. And I think it's a great analogy. But if you imagine as a colorist, would you select certain colors that you wouldn't work with? You know, and still call yourself a colorist. Interesting.
So, Breanna, from your experience, if the school wanted to teach you how to do it, am I saying black hair or Afro hair? What's the right term to educate me on this?
Well, I mean, curly hair is the category, and that can range, you know, on any spectrum from loose to tight curly. I think one thing that I had in coming into educating people about curly hair, we had to address is that curly hair is not subjective to one ethnicity. And oftentimes me, you know, coming into that room saying, you know, hey, I want to teach about curly hair. Everyone's like, oh, just your hair, you know. And then we get into the conversation, you would see all of these individuals say, oh, I deal with that too. I deal with that too. And they're of all different backgrounds. And so just highlighting that point is that this is a challenge that is highlighted, and it's completely, you know, something that we all experience in the curly hair sector, and even the straight hair sector. If you can't find somebody who knows how to do your hair and you're pleasing, then you're dealing with that same challenge.
So how much more schooling would that have been required for anyone who goes to beauty school to be able to handle curly hair?
I personally think that it wouldn't necessarily require so much more additional schooling. When you're teaching these subjects, if we're talking about how to cut someone's hair, are you including the different perspectives of how to cut it? And if we're talking about elevation and all the different techniques, it's like it's as simple as just speaking in that moment about how it's present in that different form. And so because we've gone so long excluding it and keeping it as a separate topic and giving a separate table to it, it's made it challenge for people to grasp around that. But when we really analyze what that time period looks like for a student to get their license, they have plenty enough time. It just needs to be mentioned in that same structure. And so it's, once again, as you know, I explain my experience, as other people say their experiences, we're all talking about the same thing, but the outer skin, you know, and of just human beings, that's where we're like, oh no, you're completely different. You're completely different.
Yeah, it is interesting. I've been very fortunate I'm working with Glasgow City College. Now, it was really nice. They reached out to me and they said, we would like you to come in and help us implement the training and educate the educators to then so that we have a more inclusive program. And so I said, well, I would love to do it. And I was the one that started putting the challenges up because I've worked and been in other spaces. And I've said, well, previously when people said that, they wouldn't let me do this. And then you can do whatever you want. In fact, everything I brought up, they said, whatever you want. And so we put a program in. And so for me, all it is, and when we're doing education, is just filling in the gaps. And so, for example, you know how to cut hair. So let's look at the full spectrum. You know how to colour hair. So let's look at the full spectrum. A couple of things. I've gone back to in August to do the next one. But it was fun because what we did, well, let's look at the curriculum as it stands now. And we went into the barbering one. And the barbering one was just, you're looking through, it wasn't contraindications, but it was one of those areas where it said, it asked, what colour of skin does the gent have?
Oh,
Which is
wow.
an interesting question in itself. Why is that actually relevant? I'd be curious. But
Yep.
it was there. And the 4 choices ranged from white to pink, I think it was. It was like literally, there was a gentleman who I would say was Mediterranean. And I was laughing. I said, you're not even included in this, let alone the rest of it. But if you're going to ask skin colour, why are you not just going the full spectrum? But then we have to question, why is that even
Yeah,
relevant
what
to
does it
cutting
matter?
edge?
Yeah.
So all we're going to do with this curriculum is we're going to get a framework to overlay because it's hard enough as an educator for these guys to deliver already, to make it actually what's trained in a college to be actually relevant to what's necessary in the real world, which I think happens in not just our industry. You know, we get so caught up in the dotting the T's, dotting the I's to go through that it becomes the coursework almost becomes irrelevant. You need to actually have real lived experience. Anyway, coming back to that, we only need to look at where is the gaps. And what I was teaching, I said that for me, I'm not going in to rewrite it. I want to help and coach them to be able to see where we've got an unconscious bias, where there's been, there's been a mistake made. And when I'm in the room, our industry is about 85% female, I think, was the last measurement of it. So oftentimes it's predominantly female in there. And I can then speak to, let's not talk about white privilege, but let's talk about male privilege in itself. And the women will nod in the room. I can't probably appreciate it. I know it exists, but I'm a man, so I can't see that. But you know there's a bias in that because people have that. So that's all we're looking for. Just to go, like, let's just address that imbalance and bring it back up, level the playing field and get it done. So, for example, they need to do 6 cuts to pass an exam. So why
is that true in the US as well?
Oh, I'm just using it as a
Oh, okay.
using that as a
Okay.
generic. Sorry, I'm being more like that.
I'm a software engineer,
Yeah,
disclaimer,
you're
so
like,
like
this
all this
makes
is
sense.
interesting to me. I know I'm in this business.
But if it's on cutting, then why not use something that a variety of textures rather than one texture? So meaning they don't have to get extra models in; they just need 6 models, but the models are more varied. If they've got to do a set and they've got to do 6 sets, they don't need to do it on all different. They just need to be able to do the technique of setting and understand the different materials, but to make sure there's a variety of hair all the way through. So we're asked what you were asking about. Do we need to add anything extra on? No. We don't.
Well, how about braiding? How about
Yes, well,
straightening? I mean, those
Yeah.
Yes.
those could be classes by themselves, right? Like,
Yes.
Yeah, there's still an element of like, creativity. I think about the category of color. There's the basic services that people go and get done, but then you have these very intense creative aspects where it's like, okay, if we can at least give that student the foundation of what they need, instead of separating it out by race and by texture, I think they would be more prepped for what they're actually dealing with in the real world. And so there's a lot of students.
I think that there's also this idea that, well, we're saying that every hairdresser has to be able to braid.
Yeah,
Every hairdresser has to be.
Mm-hmm.
No, what we're saying is you have a foundational understanding of the material you're working with, and then yes, specialize and do what you love.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you're going to be able to, if you're offering cutting, offer cutting for everyone.
For
Yeah.
everybody,
That's all.
100%.
Yeah, I had a stylist in our class, in our cultural competency class, and she was just talking about her experience of how a long time she was just like, oh, I'm not going to do curly hair. I'm not going to do curly hair. And one of her clients adopted a black little girl. And of course she was like, I need someone to help do her hair. And she was like, oh, well, you need to send her somewhere else. And she said it literally just hit her. And I was like, yeah, because we're going backwards, that person needs to go over there while I go over here. And so then the child was like, well, how come she can't do it? Like, Mom, I want to go to your stylist. And I think that aspect, yes, everyone has their lived in experience, but when we really look at this kind of systematic the things that we have in place, we're like, yeah, we're perpetuating this to continue. So how do we stop it? It's not going to be easy, but it definitely, little by little things can be implemented that are not hard. They're not difficult. And I keep going back to that reference of, I say my experience and so many people say, oh, I felt that too. And they look nothing like, but we all have to highlight that. It's like, do you drink water to hydrate your body? Do you drink water? So if we all do this, and I may not drink as much as you, like there's little nuances that do make us individually unique, and whether you decide to be vegan or, but we all need those specific foundational elements to function. So I think about hair in that aspect as well. It's like, yes, the inside of our strands look the same. If I put it under a microscope, I'm not going to see a shade.
There's
I'm not
no
going to,
difference.
I don't know who it belongs to and what that person looks like. But why do we think about the outer appearances like that when the inside doesn't require that?
No, it is. One of I had a person I very much respect come up to me in an industry event in London and said, do you know what? I'm embarrassed. I'm really embarrassed to say that I don't know how to work with curly hair. And he's indicating when he's, and I'm like that. Okay, let me just stop you there. I said, so imagine this. I am, 25 years of age. I had hair back in the day. Not that I mind not having hair. Let's be clear. I think real men don't need hair, but we can cut back to that later on. But I had my dreadlocks and I had a full head of hair. And I'm standing in the salon proud and confident. And we've got a big window. And again, a person of colour sees me, comes into the salon and went, I want you to do my hair. And I'm looking at her hair and going, I don't know how to do your hair. So I said to the guy, I said, imagine looking like me like that. And you say you were embarrassed. Imagine how embarrassed I felt not knowing my own hair. So there's nothing to apologise. But once you realise that, and you speak to that a lot, the ignorance is an excuse only up to a point. But once you know that you don't know that, then there is avenues now to go and get that knowledge, particularly if you're a professional salon and a professional inner salon.
Am I hearing that people's reaction is right away, no, I can't do it, but if they actually try to do it,
it's very easy.
Oh, you have some amazing, don't we? We have some and when we're running classes, the when the penny drops, and
it's like this
wonderful.
aha moment. Hey, I did it. Look at that. They look great. So is there any statistic that says how many non-African American or African British people do hair now compared to 20 years ago? Is there anyone tracking that, and are the numbers improving, or are we still where we were 20 years ago?
Okay. So I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that there is a lot of things getting measured about the demographic within the UK, meaning that how many people of colour, if we want to go down that path, and how many salons cater for that. In fact, I spoke to, if we're talking, you're from Vagaro, I've spoken to Vagaro about actually assisting in that based on how do you set up the categories within your systems. I think you're in a very unique position, and I love that you guys always listen to what I say, and I know you've recently added a badge to do with that, which I'm really happy about. However, one of the things I suggested, I wrote down, was that if you imagine you don't know where to go, because I grew up in a place I didn't know where to go. The internet didn't exist back then; it exists now. And then you go into search, and so you want your hair, let's say it's silk pressed, which is a blow dry. But if you don't know it's a blow dry and you're looking for a silk press and you're searching Vagaro for silk press and it doesn't exist, but it's under the heading of like that. So I'm going, well, so there's certain services that belong to the community that work on, braiding's an obvious one you would say, but certain types that we could create those. And then so the salons that do specialise in Afro hair, it makes it easier for the consumer to find them. And I thought, so there's things like that I'm really excited about the language improving, understanding. So when we create a blow drying element, it's not, a silk press isn't separate from that, because the science is the same, the way we hold the brush is the same, there's certain things, nuance that we would need to change. But then when somebody's training, this is how you would adapt it for this material, and this is how you do it that way. Sorry, going back to your original question, because I do go off that way. We're measuring that. The challenge we have just now, and I think probably certainly into Europe, and Breanna can speak to America, is that now we're demanding that it become, it's law now that we deliver it. But who teaches it? The colleges are required to do it, but the colleges don't have anybody to teach it yet. So there's the oxymoron. If that one, we have I was working in Dublin with college. Now, Dublin, if you remember, Britain, through madness, separated itself from Europe recently. So I was in Dublin, and they're taking a different approach. They realised that there's a problem, and what they've done is they've committed that it's a 4-year programme. And the first year of that, which we were in doing, was actually training the trainers. So putting it in place to be able to implement. So, okay, they're not doing it today, but they've got a plan how they're going to achieve it by that point. So they've got it dated out. So they're working on the braiding, they're working all these things. So they're creating a fully inclusive curriculum, which I thought, wow, that's really exciting. And then I come back to Scotland, and a college reached out to me, and they asked me if I could come in and do 3 hours training. To do the same thing that Dublin's doing in 4 years. And that's been taking 40 years of my experience, bringing in guests of mine and cramming that into 3 hours. I thought, well, that's a starting point. And then I told them how much I charge, which isn't a lot, and they can't afford it. And
wow.
Yes, which was also, because I'd swear it wasn't a lot, but they're struggling with a budget. But I'm saying, well, but it's that it shouldn't be a choice. It should be that part of it. First of all, is legally you're obliged to do it, but secondly, just you can't afford 3 hours to do something that's going to include a huge part of your population, your demographic, make them feel inclusive. And I could go off and one on that.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think. I always say this often, that there's so many different pieces of the puzzles and different avenues in order to make that happen. Your question was, do we track that? And we see that the requirements from different states, from different brands, they're getting the increase, and we see the increase of that. Has it specifically been tracked? Not quite, but we see these different things happening from different people's, points of position. The government is obviously issuing things that require it for different states. Different brands are like, well, we need to ramp up our education, include this. And then you have schools where they are seeking out help, but if they're in a position where, okay, an agency has required me to do this, but now I am given budget for specific resources, and whether that's product, whether that's curriculum, now how do I utilize that correctly? And so if they only are given 3 different options and they're reaching out to guest artists, then they have a small budget for guest artists. So it's like, okay, if this is the majority of where you're allotted to actually bring resources in, how do we make sure that those resources are inclusive of all of this different material? And so it's just really important for brands to have this, because they have a part to play in it, for the community to speak up about it, because they're also the ones who the government and everyone is looking at them saying, did you even want this? Which it seems, common that are easy just to be like, oh yeah, it's everybody needs their hair done, know? But we all just have, at all different angles, we kind of have to keep working at it until we can get the work done.
So, I mean, I've been hearing about this, by the way. I've been in this industry for 16 years. I've probably been hearing about it for 16 years. I'm hoping there's some improvement. That's why I was asking that. Do you guys feel like there's been some improvement? There's
definitely an improvement. The bit that I struggle with at times, and I'm very vocal, and this, if I talk about it now, it's probably the most public I'll ever been with it, because I don't go on socials to talk about it. But there's people that come into it because it's fashionable.
Yeah.
And there's people that come into my goodness, if we mentioned the Black Lives Matters movement and look at the commitment from the corporate world, I think the statistic is only 3% of the companies actually followed through in the commitments they made when it became yesterday's news. And so, but the people that needed, I don't know the whole politics of it. I really don't. I just know that statistic. For my industry, I want to make sure that the brands that are now finding they're interested in it, they weren't interested in it 10 years ago when we were trying, or 20 years ago when I was trying, are committed to this, and it's not a fashionable thing.
Awesome.
That we build up, and then when it becomes unfashionable, it goes away. To circle back to, I have another project that I'm involved in, and I'll come back to you on this. Because I will be hitting up a lot of people, but of the Fellowship of Hair Artists, and we had an amazing event, HairCon, and Vagaro was very much front and centre, which I'm very proud to be around the industry. It's just a lovely change. But one of the things that I've noticed, and I speak to that a lot, and I've been part of many of the big brands, is that we talk about diversity and inclusion, right? And we talk about representation, and that's all wonderful. So you go and you see these beautiful models on stage, and you've got all stunning array of models, and it's fantastic. And then you look around the audience and you go, oh, the audience isn't as representative as it is on stage, but we're patting ourselves on the back for being more inclusive and more that, because we're showing images of that. But where, if we go back to the segregation thing, where are all these hairdressers that look like me, and why are they not in the audience at these bigger events? And so one of the things I spoke to and is having some momentum is and it'll take some time, and hopefully I'm not putting the cart before the horse, but I've had a couple of meetings on it, creating a real scholarship. To create the opportunity to bring people that maybe wouldn't get access to the fellowship of hair artists in the UK and go to the spaces. And for me, I've got to be very careful, because obviously I have maybe say it's a conscious bias rather than unconscious bias, because I'm talking it so I'm aware of it. That there was a gentleman at the Hairdresser Year Awards last year. He was the first I think he's Korean, but he's East Asian person to win an award at the level that he worked at. So I would love him to come into a forum to have a conversation and inviting other people. One of my friends is South Asian. So when I talk about we want full inclusion, it's not just, no pun intended, black and white, but I want to make sure that and so that the young people out there can see people that look like themselves, and we can bring them into industry, particularly when we're having a challenge about having people in the industry as assistants now in the UK, inviting them in, but they need to see themselves there. And I think there's so much potential. So I'm really excited. I think it'll take a couple of years to get off the ground properly, because it has to be a genuine scholarship, and it has to be, in my mind, backed by everyone. All the brands have to do their bit to step up, however much it takes. Just 1 year to give that person access to the industry and mentorship through all the different people. Make sure that they can travel, because it costs to travel wherever they are, to come to London, which it happens to be, or wherever else, to get that experience, to then go back and whet their appetite and do something tangible to actually maybe make a change. And I'm excited about that. I think it's positive.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know?
So how about products? Is there a difference in the product you would use on a curly hair? I mean, there's got to be, right? No? Or even for coloring, for shampooing, conditioning, all this.
I think, first of all, let me say that I'm a global artist for a brand called Innersense. But I'm also, I would describe myself as brand agnostic, meaning that when I'm in a class teaching, I'll say, well, listen, I have a choice whether to work with this brand or not. They do. I literally can. I do my own education. I now work with other education brands. One of them happens to be one of the CEOs of the education brand happens to be sitting very close to us as well. So I do. So there's. I'm sure we'll talk about it later. Yeah. But the point is that I have a choice of the brands that I work with. So when you come into my salon, or when you see me working, and I'm predominantly working with this brand, it's not because they pay me to advocate for them, but they have done something really quite exciting as well. They've created products that, first of all, are clean. And that might mean nothing to someone. What does that mean? But it's our industry is synonymous with working with chemicals, and the chemicals we work with can be toxic in so many ways, and it's just something that was not. I've got lots of allergies, and that was just that was just normal. Okay, so, that was just the done thing. And unfortunately, if they do have it measured in the statistics. If we go into African black hair, whatever you want to describe it, it's greatly weighted against us the toxins and the toxicity of the products we work with. So to then find a brand that can
So you're saying there are specific products made for curly hair, or?
Yes.
Yes, and they tend to be more toxic than...
In a sweeping generalization, that was very much the norm for the longest time, and it still exists.
So was there like particular brands that did that, that were caring for curly hair, and some brands were not? Or is it?
I think from the marketing perspective, it was always seen as like, okay, this is the market for straight hair, marketed products, or anything wavy to straight. And then there was always marketing for, okay, now let's cultivate these products specifically for the tight curly hair market. And there's always been that segregation, going on. It's definitely got a lot better. And it really gets better when brands stop looking at it from separating it by hair type and looking at it for.
So you think it was just a marketing gimmick.
Yeah.
Most products would have
exactly.
worked just fine
I mean,
on
it's
anybody.
like,
I mean, there are different, specialty products
Yes.
where you may see someone like, oh, I like to do this style, so I tend to use a firmer gel in order to create that style.
Okay.
So, and if someone doesn't do that style, then it's like, oh, I may not have had experience utilizing that product because I don't want that level of hold. So, it instead of marketing it in what the product does, it's just to them sometimes more simple to be like, oh, well, let's put the person on it. And then it makes brands and products look like, oh, it's only exclusively for that person. It really puts them in a position because now we're getting to a point where it's like, okay, all the brands are trying to be inclusive. And they're trying to decide, so do we admit that that's how we were marketing our products, and you have to be honest, or do you revamp? And the ones who are really doing it well are just being honest and saying like, let's revamp, let's be inclusive, let's show you actually how our product works scientifically. And then to go to another level of ingredients, yes, a lot of the curly products oftentimes were the ones that included heavy just ingredients, toxic ingredients. And that's because of this component or this idea that, oh, you have curly hair, you need something heavy to control it. And it's like, no, actually, if you use something heavy or a form of liquid plastic, that's not going to that's not going to hydrate the hair. That's like saran wrapping, and so now they're really looking at that and saying, oh, well,
I haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
I feel like
there are so many new brands. There's, especially he was speaking about Innersense Organic Beauty, that is really focused on what does the hair actually need, and that's why they've really exploded in all different hair types, because it's like it's good for this straight hair, wavy hair, curly hair, and people are just in awe of why does this work so well on curly hair, and it's because they're actually addressing what the hair needs. Yeah. You should have done that from, day one, but now they're just doing a wonderful job.
They hadn't gone after the market. They just had created products that do the job they're supposed to do. Exactly. With no barrier. And so I love that. But again, going back to what I want for my business, I need a product that works on all my siblings. And I don't have to buy, again, if we look for something specific, if we wanted something really spiky and hard, you're going to go for something spiky and hard. But other than that, if you want clean hair, clean scalp, you want the hair hydrated or moisturized, if you want it to shine, or do you want all of that straight across the board.
Yeah, it is.
And for hair coloring, there's no difference. Like, black hair versus any dark hair, that you'd be using the same probably bleach product or
generically we could talk, and if you're asking about color, there is, yes, in general, but once you understand the hair characteristics and you look at the hair characteristics, then you'll make adjustments for that, meaning if the hair's dry or damaged, if the hair is finer or thicker, there's things that you will adapt to, and but other than that, no, there is a couple of wee things. If I was teaching, you'd be more specific, but overall, generally, like 90% of the science is exactly the same for all, and then for everything. For example, if we go into the science of hair and look at some of the things that I draw a comparison to, certain hair types do not have a medulla. Right, so it's just, if we look at the science of hair, within the core of a hair, certain hair types do not have a medulla. They do not segregate that part of our community that have that piece missing. I'll use another example of people trying to do well, because that always brings me into this. A certain brand were really excited, because I complain sometimes quietly, like I say, I don't often go vocal, but in a larger sphere. But they came to me and said, "Oh, we've now created a specialist section in our competition for people with afro hair," meaning that the models themselves were in this big national competition. We've got specifically, and I went, "Oh, that's interesting," and they were very happy. They're very proud that they'd I like that. So you've segregated the black people, and I knew it would happen, and you watched the face drop. But then I said, well, wouldn't it be more interesting if you got judges that could actually judge the full spectrum of hair and actually just be inclusive? Why did you need to create a wee bit? Awesome. Why don't we just make sure the judges aren't just focused on only one hair type, but just make sure that they can work on all hair types. And again, I'll be very careful, a lot of people that I know that specialize in curly hair, and it's not specifically afro, I'm talking about the full spectrum on curly hair, can also work on all hair types as well. It just so happens because we can work on that, we're inundated with demand, which means that we don't have, I would say about 90% of my clients are curly hair of all different types. But I do love my barber work, I love my straight work, I love variety, I enjoy that. I come into it to be creative and create a safe space that everybody can come into and welcoming.
Yeah, it really comes down to like, do people have access to that education? Do they have access to that product? Because if they do, then they can. You asked the question earlier, is product subjective? Does a salon need to have two different categories of product? And the answer is no. If they have the resources and the education, and they know that when they're washing their clients' hair that they can easily go and access the resources and the tools that they need, then they don't have to worry about who walks through that door. Yep. But oftentimes that's not how education is presented to them. That's also not how products are marketed towards them. So they're just going based on, okay, this is what I think. And if you come in, I'm just going to look at you and say, no, we don't do that. Wow. But you have all of the tools.
It's got to feel strange to walk into a salon.
And once again, and we're very thankful, as you mentioned, people who, the company Vagaro, if you don't have those services on your menu, then also how does the customer come in and say, you have to fight and say, no, I do, I can do it. And it's like, well, I searched it up and that's not what showed up on your platform, So it really comes from all the different angles of how do we make sure that people are getting what they need.
Well, one thing I'm proud about, we've had that menu for, we've been in business for 16 years, for a long time. I remember adding it myself, working with one of my customers.
It's something I'm definitely very appreciative and why our salon personally decided to use it, because we are a half barbershop, half salon. And that, in itself is not a common, you don't have salons and barbershops attached. And so how do you have that ability to customize what you need so that the guest feels that you're actually giving them a customized service and not just generalizing it. People just think, oh, a haircut. It's like, no, we want them to feel like.
So you're both very successful. Well, kind of coming to a close.
We're enthusiastic and passionate.
I consider you guys successful. So what's next for you, Breanna? Where do you see the future for you?
Yeah, I've done a lot of work, as a practitioner working behind the chair. Definitely enjoy that. And I love, being an example for other practitioners who are in the industry. But the reality is there are still challenges with regulations. There are still challenges with access to education that need to be addressed. And so I did just recently accept the position as executive director of the Kansas Board of Cosmetology. And so it really puts me in a position to see why are some of these regulations put on pause, because they don't have people there to advocate. A lot of these, say politicians, legislators, they're there to do their job, but also they're not here worrying about, how to do someone's hair and the reality, the practical reality of what's being taught in the schools and what the challenges are. And so that's just something that I feel blessed to have that experience walking into this position, speaking from experience, but also addressing, what the needs are and where we're lacking so that we can go ahead and get it implemented, awesome. in a system format. So
hopefully it happens soon. Under your leadership,
Yes. Very excited. I'm so proud of her. I really am. And we tease each other a lot, but I really am.
What about you, Scott?
It comes back to what do I want? And I'm at a different stage of my career. We were laughing. If I got prior to her getting this role, I was saying if I got what I wanted, she'd be out of a job, because I want obviously an equitable, a level playing field that you walk into a salon and everyone can get the hair done. That was it. Simple. So nothing more complicated than that. So I was speaking to someone that encouraged me not that long ago, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. Instead of sitting on the top of the bleachers complaining about what's happening in the state of the world, my world, which is the hairdressing world, you need to get down on the pitch, roll up your sleeves and get a bit of dirty. And so I'm finding myself, one of my strengths is talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that I'm finding my voice, and I'm not there to upset people, because I'm of mixed heritage. I had the experience of not having the knowledge, and so I know the pain of, and doing something that takes you out of your comfort zone. So I'm trying to create safe spaces through education. Talk to and educate on cultural competence, and we had a joke about that last night. And for me, the cultural competence isn't just in the hairdressing world. The education that we want to offer, and we do offer again through Breanna's brand, and I'm doing other things personally in the UK, which I hope to take her brand there as well shortly. And we'll be talking to Vagaro on the support we expect to get from you on that as well, because your platform would really facilitate some of the things we're talking about. But being able to deliver and make changes by bringing people together. As I say, for me, my daughter's just about to go to musical theatre. I do work in the theatre, and I'm in TV and film as well, and the challenges are there, and it's not just in the hair, it's in makeup and it's in design. The challenge is if for example there was an issue with cultural competence within your business, right, and it was one of your young team here that spotted it, they don't have really the power. I know you're great with your team, but they don't have the power to make the difference, but they need you to understand that. So the presentations that we need to create need to go into the boardroom. They need to hit at the production level in theatres. They need to hit at the boardroom level, so that the people down that need to deliver the services can do that. So I've got big ambitions about bringing people together. I recently I was very chuffed to win this prize about social butterfly from Vagaro, and I thought, you know what, I actually really do enjoy going around spending time talking to people. People genuinely seem interested, and then you can go, well, you're interested, but you can actually make a change as well. And it is just being aware. Sometimes it's just about language. It's not about putting money up all the time. It's not about that, but it's sometimes we have a habit, without realizing it, is perpetuating a myth, or that it's hard or it's difficult. Now that hopefully we've spoken to you, then we've talked about it being a spectrum, then you go, well, actually, yeah, we can see, but it is a much easier, that if we can say that and we can do that, it is much easier than a lot of people make out. It's resistance. People don't like change. One of the things I remember Breanna saying when she was working previously, trying to get something changed, somebody had blocked something that she was trying to do, and the comment had been, why do we need to change that? It's been okay since 1930.
Yeah. Wow.
You're like, wow. Okay. And that's some of the things we're up against. But I'm of an age now. I disagree. You can teach an old dog new tricks. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
This has been really enlightening for me, by the way. I'm hoping it's enlightening for everybody that's listening to this podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is great. I really hope you guys do great in your endeavor, in what you're trying to accomplish. I'm a big believer in you guys. I'm a big believer in the cause. Hopefully,
really appreciate you giving the time and space to talk about something we're really passionate about.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yes,
thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed the conversation, please make sure to follow the show, leave a review, and share it with someone, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean?